Okay, so I want to introduce Leanne. Leanne and Rob and I have worked together since 2003. Since 2003, we're very honored. Leanne is one of the only real, true nutritionist RDs that we have, registered nurse, registered dietitian, registered dietitian. And many of you have seen literature from Novartis, the recipes, or even recipes from Lexicon. A lot of those recipes come from Leanne. Leanne used to work at Oshna and LSU. She now is not, but she's going to be hopefully continuing to do some internet work with us. So Leanne also serves on our board as an advisor. So if you have any questions or anything like that, give us a call and we'll get you in touch with Leanne. So before, Leanne, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And I want to thank you for having me here today. It's a real joy to be able to spend time with people that I love, which is this group. We truly do get to know each other. This is one area. I've worked in oncology for 30 years. And this is one area that I love, and the reason I've probably focused into this is you're around for a long, long time. So we've become a really true family, and we get to be a close-knit group. And two of my close-knit group are Dr. Lowell Anthony and Dr. Izan Wang, and that's the reason I became very good at what I had to do, is because when they're doing the work they're doing, and I was in practice with them for so many, many years, since Dr. Anthony 2002, and Dr. Wang in 2005, I had to figure out what to do with what they created. So with that, I'm going to go through some nutrition considerations for NET patients with you. And is this it? All righty. See if I can do this right. Okay. So our objective when we're trying to do nutrition for patients in oncology and in particular neuroendocrine tumors, we really want to increase the quality of life, and we use a combination of both diet and medications to do that. So I'll talk a little bit and give a little brief even on medications, even though I'm not a pharmacist. I dealt with the symptom control in the clinic, so this is something I've done for a long time. But we want to try to give you the best absorption of nutrients and reduction in diarrhea as we can by changing and modifying your diet some. So carcinoid tumors, we've talked a lot about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but they're usually the most common and usually what we tend to be taken care of in this arena more times than in the other PNETs. And we really are trying to stop this carcinoid syndrome and treat this secretory diarrhea and flushing as best we can. And PNETs and pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors, we have several different ones. And so I just wanted to put a highlight when we talk about nutrition considerations. You really look at some of these different things that are done overexpressed in this group. So I went ahead and put this slide up so you can see some of these. Insulinomas overproduce insulin, and insulin's used to bring down your blood sugars, right? So when you have these tumors expressing insulin, it will make you blood sugars go low. You'll have hypoglycemia, and it can be extremely severe. I actually had one patient with this. Very interesting enough. I'm from the New Orleans area, and originally I'm from North Louisiana. That's why I sound like this. I don't sound like I'm from South Louisiana. But anyway, and they came to see us, and it was very severe. But he came and ate. We sent him to eat at one of the restaurants that we have down there, and they had been having to wake him up to give him juice every 2 hours. And he came to New Orleans, and he went and ate at one of our restaurants. He came the next morning, he said, "This is wonderful. I was able to sleep for 8 hours without my blood sugars going low." So the diet in New Orleans can cure some of the symptoms. That's how bad it is. So, but these are things that glucogenomas can cause hyperglycemia and more of a diabetic type effect as well as diarrhea. Somatostatinomas overproduce somatostatin, which can cause steatorrhea, which is a fatty stool. We see the same thing with some of our side effects on the drugs that we use to treat this, the sandostatins, the somatostatin, any of the somatostatin analogs. Vipoma is the one that is the most profound at watery stools. They can be 25 and 30 and really be watery. and cause dehydration and wasting. And it's one of the only ones that we really do that. I have patients for years, and they can have stools at 10 times a day and not lose weight. And I think that confuses our physicians quite a lot, because they're saying, well, if they were really doing that, they should be losing weight. But I can tell you, I've done this forever, and I've seen this, and that you can maintain even with those high levels of stools. So when I'm looking for patients, and we've talked about this a little bit, what are we looking at? First of all, I've got to know what's going on. I've got to look at this history. So I'm going to pull up, these are some of the common ones that they're not because of your carcinoid. It's just this is what we see in the United States and through countries now. We see a lot of diabetes. We see a lot of blood pressure, kidney problems, fatty liver, especially if you live in the South, down where I am. There's a lot of fatty liver, obesity, previous surgeries, and then some partial small or bowel obstructions, or if you're at risk for those. Then that's something we need to know when we start putting together your nutrition. So when we're doing the nutrition, or I'm doing a meal plan for somebody, I'm going to base it on you. We talked about, and I'll say it again at the end, everybody has different stripes, right? Everybody's different. So I really have to look at what's going on with your history. And we only fix what has to be fixed. I'm not going to change somebody's entire diet if they're not having symptoms. I want them to stay as normal and as healthy as they can. I may try to get a little bit more vitamins or a little healthier foods at times. But other than that, we really leave everything alone. Normal, no problems with digestion or flushing, probably going to stay on just a regular, what we would use for the rest of everybody else in America. We'll give you the same guidelines. If you're having digestive problems, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, steatorrhea, or constipation, that's what we're going to stress. So that's what we're going to work on the most. If you're having carcinoid syndrome and flushing, of course, we're going to work with that. Hyperglycemia, whether it's related to your tumor or whether you're just diabetic from history. And then fatty liver will also. So diarrhea is one of the main most common side effects. So these are causes of diarrhea. And you can see that these are things that are what we call non-secretory. Non-secretory causes of diarrhea. Short bowel syndrome, if you've had your GI tract reduced from tumors, that can change absorption and things go through you too fast. Inflammatory bowel, celiac sprue. It's not that carcinoid doesn't cause celiac sprue, but I have quite a few in the population that already have this, and we'll address that. Pancreatic insufficiency, I think, is more common. It's also part of the side effects of somatostatin analogs. Intestinal surgeries, shortening the bowel or changing the bowel, or taking out the ileocecal valve, which is a huge change. If they can leave, that makes my job a lot easier anyway. Gallbladder removal, whether that's happened. And I'm very sympathetic with this area because they took out my gallbladder many years ago because of it just wasn't working. And I have side effects very similar to many of y'all, and it's because just from the bowel, the bowel malabsorption. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Bacterial overgrowth, when you've gone to surgery and they kept your MPO too long, not put anything through, you can get a bacterial overgrowth. The bile acid colitis, and this is very, very common. This is where you've had the gallbladder out, so now the bile just kind of seeps into your small intestine, and it's going to go all the way to colon, and then it just wipes it out. It's going to cause a real sudden diarrhea on its own. And then we talked about this, the drug-induced somatostatin analogs. So what's the best diet? So the best diet for you are the foods and fluids that we can give you with a nutritional value that your body can tolerate and absorb. So it's a little bit different than what you see in some other areas of prevention and in oncology. Many times a dietitian that may not have worked with patients with neuroendocrine tumor will treat you like we do every other area of oncology, where we're just trying to cram as much sugar and fat and just anything we can get down to keep you going. And it's very different here. Those things in this area will make you sicker. So we can't do the same thing here. So this is I'm going to go through a little bit about how we select things for the meal plan, just so you can get an idea of things that are pretty common and things that really tend to do better than other things. And so we'll start with protein sources. You usually need 2 to 3 ounces of protein at your meals, and that's about the size of the palm of your hand. It's a smaller amount. And then we'll try to use 1 or 2 ounces and do the little meals in between. So really have most of my patients and people I've worked with usually use small feedings throughout the day. The one thing we have from recall and from research is that was done by Monica Warner was kind of our golden rules that we're working with. And the main causes of syndrome were large meals. So large meals are the biggest problem that we have. So we really have to cut these down. But I still got to get the same number of calories in you in a day. So the only way I really can do this is by doing small meals with snacks in between. So that's a real problem. We want to use, you can use red meat, so I'm not an anti-red meat person. We try to get it to be lean because you have trouble with fat malabsorption. This is, yes, it's heart healthy, but this is not for heart healthy. This is because you don't tolerate fats. So we're going to go with lean cuts. And on the red meat, I did cancer screening for years and cancer prevention. And what we know in the best work that's been put out in nutrition is that you really could have up to 18 ounces per week of a red meat. But pork's a red meat. And lamb's a red meat. So pork's not really the other white meat. It is a red meat, so it counts in that 18 ounces, okay? Fresh fish is wonderful, but fatty fish, such as the we use for heart healthy reasons, can still give you the fat malabsorption that we see with the other meats. So be careful, you may not be able to tolerate as well. Or if you're taking a pancreatic enzymes, you may have to very well use it with your salmon and your tuna, the fatty cold water fish. Wild game is fine. It's usually pretty lean. It doesn't have preservatives, and we see in other areas, so these things can be used very well. We're in the South. Where I'm from, my dad has always hunted, and so I was raised eating venison. I never had beef for years and years and years, and I think there are probably some advantages to that through the years. Quinoa is the only plant total protein that we have, and it is usually tolerated very, very well in this population. It's a soluble fiber. You'll hear me talk about soluble fibers. Those are the fibers that the body can absorb better. They have the GI tract absorb water, and they're good for you, and they go through at a slower transit time, slower pace. That way your body can absorb nutrients and it doesn't push the diarrhea quite so fast. We'll talk a little bit about the insoluble fibers in a minute when we get to those. Some lentils, some beans are really a little bit too rough for the system. Anything that irritates your GI tract is going to cause diarrhea to be worse. So red beans, black beans, and pintos tend to be a harder shell or harder bean to tolerate. But garbanzo beans tend to work pretty well. Lentils work pretty well. Nut butters, if you can tolerate the fats, can be, and this can be cashew butters as well. Sometimes if you're on pancreatic enzymes, we'll have to give you these as well. But those things can be done pretty successfully. Fresh seafood is we're in the area here, scallops, shrimp, all this is good. And if you live, you could do this here too, as you could have alligator here as well as you can in Louisiana. It is also very, very lean, and we kind of tease about it, but actually it's a well-tolerated meat. Grains, we do try to do if you're on a normal diet, we still want you to do the same thing we're wanting every other body by the USC grade guidelines, trying to get about 35 grams of fiber daily. If you have normal bowel movements, try to use a mixture between insoluble and soluble, and that's fine. If you're having diarrhea, we do the higher soluble fibers. And what's a soluble fiber? It's the inside of the fruits and vegetables. It's the inside of the vegetable, that's pulpy. It's not the skins. The skins and the peels are insoluble. Or in whole grains where you're trying to get the roughish, it's kind of what you hear. Those can cause irritation and are not absorbed quite as well in patients that are having this much diarrhea. And that would be for anybody having that much diarrhea. We would reduce that, what we say, reduce the fiber. But it's actually insoluble fiber that we're reducing. Non-gassy foods for post-op and for gas problems. Gas just makes everything worse. It puts more pressure on that GI tract and can worsen your symptoms. There was a diet put out back in 2010 out of Australia called the Fodmap Diet. It's fructose oleo disaccharides and phenols. Anyway, it's available on the internet. Most of the dietitians can find this for you, myself included. I think that it has been pretty effective in reducing foods that tend to be a little bit gassy or harder to absorb. And it's not, actually the diet was put out to do for 30 days, kind of like an elimination diet, and then let your body retract. Your body can reset. So that's the symptom. That's kind of what's behind that. If you've been told, if you're having small bowel or bowel obstructions, many times the doctor will order a low fiber diet, and so that's going to be less than 13 grams of fiber a day. So know that. So if you're looking at the labels, you'll know what to count. That's what we consider. Your doctor will tell you that, but he won't tell you what that really means. So 13 grams is considered low. So we talked about quinoa. Guess what? It's also a carbohydrate. It's a wonderful energy source for us as well. Potatoes without their peels. If you're having diarrhea, rice. If you're having diarrhea, use the white, or when you first start them, they're a little bit lower in fibers, and they just absorb really well. That's why everybody in South Louisiana probably have obesity problems, because it absorbs really well. But in patients, it's really helpful. We use rice milk. It's an old thing. Have any of y'all heard of rice milk? Rice milk's used in third world countries still today to replace hydration. And there's some of those, we even have those recipes made through these companies. Pasta, couscous works pretty well. You can use a brown bread. You know, we talk about don't use whole grains, and kind of take responsibility for that getting out in literature. But we don't mind 3-gram whole wheat grain. You know, that's fine. But what usually is irritating is the 9 grains, or you can see the seeds and all of that in there. If you're having diarrhea, that just irritates that, or diverticulosis sometimes will have an irritation from that. So we have to be careful with that. If you're having, that's 3 grams. That's on the label. Just look for 3 grams or less. That's how you'll know that bread's okay. And then our hot cereals are usually fine. Those things tend to help. They're real high in soluble fibers, and they'll help with water reabsorption. And you're having really bad days, these are kind of your go-to things. These things will kind of help sit with you and actually can help with some water reabsorption there. Fruits, we try to prevent some of the, fresh fruits are great, but fresh fruits also can create some of the flushing and the antihistamine effects that we see in this, and the problems there. Fresh fruits that get soft, I talk with my hands, so it always gets interesting when I'm holding a mic. But foods that get soft as they ripen, bananas, avocados, these tend to be the ones that they form tyramine. It's another amino acid that is a precursor to tryptophan. So these foods tend to cause this flushing, that and antihistamines. That antihistamines come from aging. Tyramine comes from aging. So foods that have been aged, smoked, cured, these things tend to cause that flushing effect that you're seeing. Some things are just naturally high in histamine. Strawberries, tomatoes, these things you may find that these things are will cause you to flush as well. Sometimes it's, we'll see it as well in other areas, and we'll talk about that. You'll see the melons, the nectarines, the mangoes. In a little bit, I'll tell you about these. Ask me again in a few minutes when I forget. But I will talk about, I know that y'all asked about the test for serotonin, and then we'll go through those that you avoid. But some of these fruits are very common in that list as well. Canned fruits in their own juice tend to do better because sugar, if you've had a GI surgery in particular where it's shortened, or Whipples, we take sugar out, and it's not because they make cancer grow. But what they do is increase the transit time. They make things move through you faster, the concentration, the osmolality. So we really try to use less sugary things. We tend to do, when I do a meal plan, I'm doing it much more like what I would do for a diabetic anyway. You know, I take out those heavy concentration of sweets. We want to keep it less than, again, 13 grams, the magic number, but 13 grams also in carbohydrates, in sugary foods, if you want to look at a label. Fruit juice is better tolerated if it's diluted with water, especially if you're having diarrhea. Avoid foods that are overripe. Bananas and raspberries are a good example of that. Some foods are just really high in fiber as well as maybe some other issues. But these things can also cause rapid transit or diarrhea, and that's pineapples, watermelon, the dried foods, and they also cause you to have a risk of obstruction, so be very careful with those as well. Vegetables, main thing with vegetables is that we found is that if you're having trouble with diarrhea, chop them real fine, chop them. That's where we do the cooking. We want it to break down a little bit. We're trying to, so that it doesn't irritate the GI tract so much. It also reduces the risk of obstructions. We talked a little bit about the dried beans already. Corn's another one of those that just tends to be hard to tolerate. If you've ever had a baby and you fed babies corn, you know it goes straight through you. It comes out looking just like it went in. You know, it's just one of those things that just doesn't break down very well. Frozen and canned foods are fine. Just if you're hypertensive, let's watch that salt. You know, we never want to get too much salt. We tend to get it in foods anyway. And it's mainly because we just don't want the other, I mean, if you're hypertensive or something, or it can cause you to be dehydrated easier. So we don't want too much salt. You know, you can have some normal amounts, just not really, really heavy. Cook to a soft consistency if you're having poor diarrhea, or a lot of diarrhea or poor absorption. I've taken people back all the way to baby food. You know, they just couldn't tolerate it and would have to start back over from a baby food consistency. And that's usually after a real big surgery or something where that GI tract just doesn't want to kick in for us. Cruciferous vegetables are very gassy, so they tend just to be irritants as well. And those things are very good for us if you can tolerate it and you're not having these issues. But for the for my patients that are having issues with gas, I sure try to keep them off of cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Onions, now you can use onion powder. I mean, when you're seasoning, use onion powder. That's not quite so bad, but the best one is to use chives. Chives give you the onion flavor, but they don't give you the gas, so chives is a great alternative to that onion. So low-fat dairy, tends to be tolerated because we talked about the fat not being tolerated very well. Soy's okay. I don't think that we have much trouble with that. Try to use the one that's no sugar added, rice. Yogurt, sour cream, low-fat cheeses, low-fat American cheese. When we talk about flushing, one of the things that cause flushing in this area is the aging process of cheeses. So very few cheeses will be tolerated very well. There's a few that you can get that are a little bit lower. We can use ricotta cheese in cooking. We can use cottage cheese in cooking. And low fat, those do fine. And then American cheese, I always tease, I say, if you really consider that a cheese. But they can be used in cooking. In sauces, things you need to add back, it can be very helpful. Low-fat ice cream, if you need something for a dessert, can also be tolerated. Fats tend to be the things that are hardest for us to tolerate, but very important because we need the calorie source here. So many of my patients through the years, they'll be on a pancreatic enzyme. How many of y'all are on pancreatic enzymes? Oh, not near enough. If you're having floaty foul stools, if when you have poop in the commode, it comes to the top and you can see it still and it's floating up there, you're pancreatic insufficient. From usually one or two reasons, and sometimes it's from that gallbladder being gone, but more times than not, you're having fatty stools, especially if you're on the somatostatins and analogs, Sandostatin and Lanreotide. They're wonderful drugs. They're necessary. We have to have them, but many times you're going to have to take a pancreatic enzyme before your meals or right when you begin eating. Some people eat very slow, and sometimes we have to put another one in the middle of their eating times. But these things are almost essential to get these down. The reason I worry about you not doing that is because if you eat and that goes straight through you, you don't have enough time to absorb the nutrients you need or the vitamins. And fat-soluble vitamins are very, very important for us. And they help build our immune systems back up. They keep us from being blind. You know, this is A, D, E, and K. You've probably heard, you know, the carrots are good for you. They're a good source of A. These are things we worry about. So we do try to keep these things. Remember, avocados and olives are fats. Those are fatty vegetables, or fruits, really, avocado. And then an overripe avocado can cause flushing. So be very, actually the serving size of an avocado is like this. And I very rarely see people eat this much of an avocado. I usually see them eat a half a cup of guacamole, you know, so that's where the problems come in. You can use some of the butter-flavored powders that are on the market to give you some flavor, because we don't want to take away the flavor. I want you eating, so I'm going to try to teach you. And I can teach you to cook. I can teach things, and I'll say now, I retired 2 years ago, but from popular demand, I'm going to go back into practice again, and I'm going to do this more of a virtual. We're going to try a virtual dietitian. I'm going to do this through telemedicine, mostly phone calls, and the mechanisms we have again. And if somebody really wanted to come see me, we'll arrange that down in the New Orleans area. But these are things that I tell people and that I teach when I'm doing meal plans, not just telling you what you shouldn't do. If you've seen a dietitian, that's typically what we do. This is what you can't have. You know, I'm more of, let me tell you what you can have. Let's do this way. So healthy oils are great. Olive oils and canola, we hear about it, but they still cause diarrhea. They're the same effect as everything else. Beverages, we want you to still get the same amount as everybody else, 6 to 8 ounces a day, but you're going to usually have to break this down into 4 ounces at a time. And if you've had a Whipple, this is really, really important. But anybody's having diarrhea, and if you ever come to me, I've told you to try this. You want to separate the liquids from the solids by 30 to 45 minutes. That reduces transit time. Doesn't push it through quite so fast. And it can really help. But if you've had a Whipple, it's almost, that's the first thing we try to do, is try to separate that liquid from that solid. Water and flavored waters tend to be the best beverages out there without caffeine. Caffeine is it has a catecholamine effect, and you've heard about catecholamines today, so be very careful with that. Non-carbonated drinks tend to do better just because they really cause a lot of gas. Seasoning, use all the natural herbs you want to. These things tend to be great ways to get flavor in. There's even a few of them that have some health benefits. When you hear about curry or turmeric, you know, it's a curry. We probably never get enough in to be the therapeutic levels that they are, but we know it's beneficial. Cinnamon is a natural way to, in some people, but we know it keeps hyperglycemia effects down a little bit. And nutmeg naturally slows down the GI tract. So those things are great ways to kind of help yourself when you can. We talked about the onion. Garlic is also one of these things. And like I said, and their powders can cause trouble. That's why I use the chives more in recipe development. Hot spices, if it burns your tongue, it can cause crisis syndrome, okay? So be very, very careful with things that are hot. The peppery foods tend not to do very well at all. Bake, broil, braise, saute, grill. If you're grilling, try to avoid direct flame, and that is a cancer prevention thing there. It causes heterocyclic amines, and we know that this is a carcinogen. So try not to char meat. You know, what I do and what we try to do is put the flame, like your charcoal on one side, and then cook the meat on the other side of the grill, so you still get the heat, but you don't get quite so much direct. So just be a little bit careful with that. If you marinate your meat ahead, it drops this risk 60%. So it's almost worth putting a marinade on, because you really get some more protection from that. If you're immune suppressed, if you've been through chemotherapy, if you have gone through PRRT and your immune system's down, do not use raw foods. And some of you may have been on a diet where they've told you not to have raw foods because of your white count in chemotherapy. Now, if you're, and we still have chemotherapy, and I think we'll see more of this over time. But be careful. You can wash everything, but you really want to keep it down so we don't get bacteria and things that are on those foods. It's just going to complicate the diarrhea effect. And foodborne illnesses tend to be one of the biggest readmit problems that we have in geriatology and geriatrics. Foodborne illness is very, very common, and just the ages of people that have this needs to be considered, so be careful with them. This is another thing on the same effect. Separate your chopping boards and clean between all raw foods and anything that's been cooked. Making sure that you use good kitchen technique. Use the Clorox rags around everywhere. Don't let your chicken splash everywhere, because you just don't want the chance of a foodborne illness, because it's a bad diarrhea and you're already having enough trouble. So be very careful when making sure that you use good good sanitation when you're in the kitchen, so be careful with that. Don't use rags. If you're getting chemotherapy, really use the paper, things that you can use and throw away. Rags hold a lot of bacteria, and sponges are even worse than that. Sponges you can throw in the microwave and zap them for a minute, and they'll kill that bacteria, and you can usually use those again, but be very careful with those things. Make sure that you cook and store at appropriate temperatures. Food that has been left out more than 2 hours, I would not give you 2 hours on it, but that has to be thrown away. And where we see this is where people that are having family events or something where the food just kind of get Thanksgiving. Let's go Thanksgiving, Christmas. That's where we are. They just kind of leave it out, and let it, because family comes through and grazes and everything. And then, so that food that's been out, it doesn't go back in the refrigerator. It has to be tossed at that point for that patient. Now, there's some people that have been around, they don't have any problems, and they can, they got really good guts, and they'll eat that. But for the rest, for my patients, I really, really want to be careful with these things, okay? Make sure that it's in a refrigerator, if it's supposed to be in a refrigerator, and then if it's something that needs to be, always, even canned goods, you need to heat it up to 140 degrees. Deli meats, they need to be heated up to 140 degrees before you eat them. If they come out of that deli straight off those slicers and stuff, they shouldn't be consumed until you've already heated them back up. We're going to use the meal plans for the symptoms. If you're flushing, then we're going to avoid these aged and fermented foods from syndrome. This gives you a list. Some of the things in there that are real common or that we don't think of so much as the shrimp paste, miso. I am a really anti-MSG person because I have seen so much trouble with MSG through the years in this group as well. Just anybody. You know what MSG is? Everybody familiar with that? So MSG can cause flushing in a normal population. It can cause everybody to flush. So I don't always know if that's what's causing it or not, but it's going to cause everybody to flush, and so just be careful with that as well. And we've already heard about the alcohol beverages, but these things, again, they're fermented and aged, and they can cause syndrome as well. So when you're going to go to the grocery store, make a list, and make that list with things you can consume and absorb. Try not, if you like things and they're not going to tolerate, just make sure you're around the house when you do it, because I can't change, if you don't absorb it, I can't change that, but I want to keep your quality of life. So I have some patients through the years, so they love ice cream, and they have it at night before they go to bed. They're at home, they know where the bathroom is. If they're not losing weight, if they're losing weight or involuntary weight loss, I really discourage it, because I don't want to do anything that's going to cause more trouble. But if you're doing pretty good and you're at home and you want some of these things, that's when you do them. But do not go out to an event. Don't go out to a family get-together or go to a ball game and get into these foods, because you're going to have a sudden urge to go to the bathroom, and it's really, really reduces your quality of life, because it makes you really uncomfortable in these situations. So make your list from things you know that's going to work. Know what you're going to eat tomorrow. The biggest mistakes that we make, and this is with patients, this is with people that have dieting, it doesn't matter. If you know today what you're going to eat tomorrow, you're going to do fine. But if you wait till you're hungry tomorrow and you need something, and you're driving down the street now in Louisiana, we would say that you're going to stop at Popeyes, because fried chicken smells a lot better than baked chicken, right? You make these choices. But we tend to make bad choices when we have to make sudden choices. So think ahead. Even if you're going to be out, I'm going to go to the doctor, I'm going to be at this setting, think of something that might be there where you can eat, I'm not going to push out restaurants, but a sandwich one that you could kind of pick what you wanted a little bit better. You can heat some of these sandwiches. You can just tell them, could you please heat this one or use one that's heated? So just think ahead. When you've cooked foods, not wasteful either. If you've cooked a pot of something and it's wonderful, I don't want you to I want you to go ahead and store it before you eat it. Know that I'm going to eat this much, and then I'm going to go ahead and store this. Store it in portions, because you're going to have bad days. And on those bad days, you want to pull something down that you know you do well with, and that you can just heat up, warm up real quick. So take the time. If you have something that you really like, or somebody's brought to you from outside, now that's a little iffy, be careful. But go ahead and portion size it, and so that you have it available. Anything that's been in your refrigerator over 48 hours needs to be thrown out. So keep foods in your house all the time that there can use to make something with. Because again, if you don't have something at home or you go, you're going to make problems for yourself. So these are just some of the standard things that you can keep in your cabinet so that you can have access without, even on your worst of times. I think it's real important in the winter, especially if you're in the cold, you know, where you might not be able to get out for a day or two. Don't go to the grocery store hungry. Take a list, read the labels, replace your staples as you need to. And if you can't digest it and can't resist it, don't buy it because it's just going to cause you harm. Plan ahead. Small, frequent feedings tend to do better, and try to do this from a rainbow. People say, oh, Leigh, everything you say is white, but it's really not. You can get some deep yellow acorn squash. Winter squashes tend to do really well. They tend to even replace sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes can be a little bit gassy, and they have a lot of the stringy parts to it. So you really can almost replace every recipe you would do with sweet potatoes with either acorn or one of my winter squashes. I just went blank on my other one. Butternut. Sorry, butternut. If you're going to go out, get the menu ahead if you can. If you have medicine, if you're taking pancreatic enzyme, take it with you. Make sure that you take it. And if you take cholestyramine, how many are on cholestyramine? How many know what cholestyramine is? Cholestyramine is a drug, it was really one of the first cholesterol drugs on the market. But it is a bile, B-I-L-E, I'm so southern, B-I-L-E, bile. It collects the bile and carries it out of your body. So if you're having these real sudden urge diarrhea stools and they burn your bottom, it's bile. It's 9 times out of 10, it's a bile. It's from that, we talked about that drip, drip, drip. And the worst is, and this is me, okay? This is me. I had mine out. So I don't want to eat, so I've skipped meals all day long. I've either been running or, you know, you don't want to go to the bathroom somewhere, so you skip all day long, and it's dripped and it's dripped and it's dripped. So finally, when you decide to eat at 8 o'clock, it goes straight through you. You've waited too long. So you'll do better to eat something throughout the day. Even if it's just crackers, you know, just put something in so that bile has something to work on to collect it too, because that's probably one of the biggest problems that we have. So take your medicine, and if you're not on these medicines and you're having, do you know what secretory diarrhea is? Have we've gone through all these diarrhea talks. There's 2 types of diarrhea. Secretory is what happens from the overexpression of hormones from your tumor. And if we didn't feed you, if I put you on IVs in the hospital and you didn't have anything to eat, you would still have stools. You would still have diarrhea. That's secretory diarrhea, okay? Non-secretory is some of these other things we talked about, your surgeries, the medicine, the removal of organs, shortening. Those are non-secretory causes of diarrhea. So if you're having non-secretory diarrhea, we usually have to have medications. We already talked about just the anti-diarrhea medicines. Those can be effective. Max those out. Use these other ones to help with your absorption. And sometimes it may I have 2 or 3 with different patients. I work in nursing homes a lot now, so everybody's a resident instead of a patient. That's why this keeps coming up. Stay off the foods and know that some of these things just are not going to be tolerated. Now, pureed vegetables are a great way to get vegetables in. One of the best meals we had, and this was at a conference, was a little real tenderloin medallions, and they pureed beets and used the pureed beets under the medallions, and it gave almost a sauce, so it was easier and juicier to eat. And it was perfect, and then you're getting your purple vegetables. So we got that rainbow coming in. So some of these things can be really, really helpful. Vitamins, minerals, we really worry about this. Malabsorption of water-soluble vitamins and fat-soluble vitamins can be affected in your diarrhea. If you're eating a really sound diet and not everybody needs vitamins, that's fine. But if you're having malabsorption and you're not eating normally, which counts for most of my patients, you're probably going to need a multivitamin. Now, I don't give 2 multivitamins a day, and some people I give it every other day because of the fat-soluble vitamins. But if you're wiping out, if you have more than 6 stools a day, we may have to give a water-soluble vitamin another time. May give it multivitamin in the morning, and then in the evening give a water-soluble vitamin, and that's vitamin C and the B vitamins, and we'll do that separate. Vipomas, we do that many times in a vipoma. Vitamin D is very commonly depleted. It's depleted in me, and I'm in the sunshine, but I'm getting old. So as we age, we don't absorb vitamin C as well. When you have fat malabsorption, it's one of the fat-soluble vitamins, and can be depleted. Usually all of it can. We used to check back in the day when I started this, and we didn't worry about cost so much. I could get an essay and get the vitamin A's, D, A, K, I get everything. Now it's so expensive to get you, and to get the diagnosis to prove it is really hard for my patients, so I quit doing that. But I do the vitamin D because everybody will get it. Almost everybody will pay for a vitamin D. And then if it's really depleted, I kind of associate, well, it's probably everything. But definitely the vitamin D. Make sure you're getting that checked. If you malabsorb vitamin D, you may not be able to get it from the vitamin sources that they're giving you. So there's one of them on the market that's called, there used to be two on the market, and I'm going to push certain ones, but they took the other one off the market. But it's called Aqua Adek, and this molecule was made to carry over on a water molecule, so you can absorb this one. This is one. It was put out for children with cystic fibrosis, where they have huge fat malabsorption. So this is the vitamin that was put out for that. But I've been using it for, I'm so old, 17 years, and I have some people that just swear by it. I mean, it was just made the difference in the fatigue. Fatigue is a real big problem. Vitamin D's being low can really cause fatigue and bone pain, so be careful with it. So remember you have that as well. You're going to have to ask a pharmacist for it. You don't have to have a prescription for it, but they won't keep it out on the shelf. You'll have to go through your pharmacist to get it. Medications we've talked about, make sure that you're using them as they're ordered. If you haven't had one or you're not on it, try to find talk to your physicians, talk to your family. Your family doctors tend to be a little even better than that, to make sure, because we can do, a lot of your surgeons after surgery, they'll put you on these things. So just, if you're not on it, you can definitely question that. Enteral supplements, I get asked this a good bit. They help us add nutrients, add calories. When you can't eat as much, we can do it in liquid form usually. The ones that we use in other areas of oncology, where we just give you a lot of calories and fat, they don't do so well. I tend to use the ones that are made for diabetics because they have a lower sugar load. Some specialty products, if you had short bowel syndrome, we have some products made for just this. On there, they're a little costly, but they'll absorb because they're already partially broken down, so they absorb very quickly through your GI, so you'll get those. And then amino acids, we have a great booth. There's a new product that's out. It's showing some really great results. I really have used it not only in this arena, I've used it with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's patients. It helps with leaky gut and hydration, and this has an amino acid product. And if you hadn't tried it, go by the booth and try it. Let them talk to us at Untitled. They gave us some great socks today. So go by and check that, because this is some magic. It was put out for leaky bowel. It was made by, and she in here, Cynthia may have to correct me on this, but it was developed by an oncologist that had a background in GI. Radiation oncologist that had seen the problems that had been created from leaky gut for years, and this is the product that came out with. Wonderful product. It's going to be big. It's going to get out there. We really are excited about it. And it can help reduce these frequent stools and help your hydration. Makes you feel better. So it doesn't have calories or anything in it to speak of, but it's really the fluid and these amino acids that are just magic. That's what we're working on. And then conclusion, remember, just like zebras all have different stripes, you're all different. Where you've had surgeries are different. Where your tumors have been are different. And so we have to look at everyone individual. I can give very general ideas, like in this. But if you're having really issues, try to seek out a dietitian, registered dietitian that knows something about neuroendocrine tumors. I've been doing webinars for dietitians and trying to educate doctors and nurses for many years. I put out and I didn't do a disclaimer. My disclaimer is I put out for pharmaceutical, I've been paid to write education materials for you and for nurses and doctors for the last 12, 13 years. I encourage you to find them and use them. They really are helpful. When you're not too sure what to do, these guides will be help. The book, if y'all saw the book back there, that was a great project, and they have some great ideas as well, and very proud of that. But find a dietitian that knows where they are, and this is why I'm going to come back again and try to help in this arena again, because there's not enough of us. There's not enough registered dietitians that really know this field. So after the first of the year, I'm making arrangements to go through all the hoops to try to get licensed across more states. I'll begin a practice again. So you'll be here in a little bit. If you need to get in touch with me in between time, I'm going to give you my cell phone number. And you can, if you do texting, you'll do better to text me and just say, I am a patient, I'm seeking help, just so that I know who you are a little bit. But you can leave a message, but I'm not good about checking my messages much. But do that. But I'll have an official, all this, and a line and everything. It'll be different after we get started. But my cell phone number is 985-351-4502. My email address is just like my name, LeighAnne.BURNS@gmail.com. Reach out to me. I don't mind, helping anybody. That's what I'm here for. That's why I got into this area. My mother actually had a neuroendocrine tumor. It was one of the ones that's non-functional. You may have heard of it, Cushing's disease. Very strange one. But I'm very interested in many areas of this. So thank you, Bob, for having me. And I appreciate it.